Hi dears, it's Katie and I'm here today to do another catch-up video. If you didn't notice, I didn't put one up last month. I decided to do something kind of different for December, so I'm incorporating September, October, and November in this. I am not going to be doing a haul portion of the video like I normally do. I didn't really haul that much, and I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I hauled because I read them, so there's really not much point for me to do a haul and then talk about them again later. So I'm going to skip that part and primarily focus on the books that I've read and the books that I am currently reading. But I'm also adding in my samples for this month's video just because I don't have much time to do a lot of filming right now. So might be a little bit of a longer one, so grab a snack or a hot drink or whatever you prefer and sit tight. So let's launch into all of the books that I've been reading the last couple of months. So starting with September, the first thing that I read and finished was Small Spaces by Katherine Arden. I buddy read this with my friend Kara. We were both in the mood for some kind of like spooky fall atmospheric read, and that was absolutely perfect for it. So if you don't know what this book is about, it's a middle grade novel that follows our main protagonist Ollie right after her mother has died. She's in school and she's just trying to deal with her grief and everything, and her classmates go on a trip to a farm. And the thing about this farm is it's very parallel to a book that Ollie is reading, and so all kinds of eerie and creepy and spooky things happen, and it's just a delight. I loved it so much. I'm coming to really love Katherine Arden as an author. I loved both her Winter Night books, and I'm really loving the Small Spaces series as well, and I can't wait to pick up more of her books in the future. Then the second book that I read and finished in September, I technically started it in August, but I finished it in September, and that was The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. And unfortunately, I was not as much of a fan of this book than most people that I know who've read it. Didn't like how it was written. I didn't like any of the characters really. I just had a really hard time getting into it and settling in. A large chunk of the book is set up and just like introducing you to the world, so it was just an extra disconnect, and it just wasn't his best work in my personal opinion. I've read other Sanderson books that I preferred more than this one. So I was kind of disappointed in that because I was expecting to love it. Everyone and their mother was telling me I was going to love it. So when I didn't love it, I was just that much extra disappointed. It was kind of a repeat of the King Killer Chronicle situation. So yeah, I will continue with this, but no idea when I'm actually going to start Words of Radiance. Then the third book that I read and finished in September was my Friends Choose book. That was An Ember in the Ashes by Zeba Tahir. This book has been on my TBR for so long. So I'm really glad that my college friend picked this for me, because I actually ended up really, really enjoying it. Before I went in, I was a little on the fence because a lot of people I know were either in the category of I love this book or I don't like this book, and there was very little to no in between. So I was like, I don't know where I'm gonna fall. So I actually kept putting it off because of that reason. I would have picked it up a lot sooner, but that just didn't happen. So I'm glad I finally read it. I really loved it. For those of you who don't know what it's about, it is a kind of Roman fantasy type book. There is Leah, a slave, and then there's Elias, who is a really, really kind of high up warrior, and it turns out that their fates are kind of intertwined, and things kind of go from there. That's a really terrible explanation of what that book is about, but I really loved it, and I can't wait to continue on with the second book. And the next book I read was Children of Earth and Sky by Gavriel K. And I had mixed feelings about this book. I ultimately read this for my college friends book club that I'm part of and semi-run. And I really liked the world in this book, and I generally liked the characters, but everything else was just kind of mediocre at best. But like, it's a Renaissance-based fantasy, and I just don't see that a lot. So the fact that like I don't see a lot of it, and I was kind of disappointed in it, was a little extra frustrating for me. I have at least one other Gavriel K book that I do want to give a try to. So while I wasn't like 100% sold on this, I would be curious to see if I would like something else of his. So I'm not fully writing him off yet, but I was a little bit more disappointed than excited. But all in all, like, I didn't hate it. It was just a middle of the road book, and I was really expecting to love it. So the fact that I didn't was sad. And then I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, and I also wasn't 100% in love with this book either. I really love the setting the most. And I have a feeling that this is going to be one of those books where I appreciate it more on reread, because this was my first time reading it, and I just kind of went in and I was just like, I don't know, am I feeling this at the time, kind of a thing. But yeah, as I said, I really like the setting. The character study in it was kind of interesting, but overall, it definitely wasn't my favorite. And I might read it at some point in the future, but for now, it wasn't what I was looking for. And now, getting into the books that I read in October. The first book that I read was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. This was a reread for me. I love Jane Eyre. I've always loved Jane Eyre, but I did see it a little bit differently this time, and I loved it a little bit less, but not by much. I just love Jane as a character. I love the character study. I love the atmosphere of the book. And I think part of it could have been nostalgia too, I don't know. But I also found that the theme of love throughout the book was really interesting, and I liked the way that that was explored in the different suitors that Jane encounters throughout her life. So I can understand why people don't like it, but I personally really did, and I had a really great time rereading it. And then the next book that I read was Dead Voices, also by Katherine Arden. This is the second book in the Small Spaces series that I was talking about earlier, and I loved this one. Slightly less than the first, but not by much, and I just had a really good time with it. I really liked getting to see some of the characters that were kind of more side characters in the first book kind of get a little bit more page time in this one, and I really liked certain aspects of the mystery spookiness of this one. But it didn't have the atmosphere that the first book did, primarily because it takes place indoors for the majority of the time rather than outdoors like the first one did. And where Katherine Arden really, really shines is with the atmospheric outsideness. So I think that because we didn't get that really, it was just lacking just a little bit. I still love the characters. I still really liked the plot. It was very fast moving. It was really interesting. It was fun. And just the writing was also great. And I do love her world building and her atmosphere, but it was just a little bit different this time because it was primarily inside. But that's just a personal preference thing. And then the next book that I read in October was Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. And this is my friend's pick book for October. And this was picked for me by Vendy. And I had complicated feelings for this book. There were parts that I really, really liked, and there were parts that I was less of a fan of. I really liked Nona as a character, and I really liked the world. It just was a bit more on the unique side. It's not a setting that we typically see, like taking place in a convent with assassin nuns. Like, that's just really unusual. So I really liked those aspects of the book. The plot felt very slow, and I love slow fantasy. Slow burn fantasy is my jam. But there was just something about this that felt very repetitive, and it just didn't feel like there was much happening, if that makes sense. And there was just, I felt that the fight scenes, which I also tend not to hate, like I actually can really enjoy the action-like scenes. After a while, they started to feel gratuitous and repetitive, and like I was just reading the same thing that I'd read several chapters before. And so there was just some kind of pacing issue, I feel, with the book. I don't know if that changes, because the ending of this book was interesting and I want to know what's going to happen. But I'd be curious to see if it changes. But overall, like, I liked the characters and the world, and I'm glad I read it for that reason alone. And then I read my usual 21 Spooktacular poems book. It's like my Halloween poetry book that I've got, and I read that every year. I love it every year, and it was no different this year. I always have a good time reading it, and it was a book that I read with my family. Like, we kind of have started a semi-tradition where we pick like a shorter book that are like poems or quotes and sayings and things, and like we'll read them after dinner or something as a fun activity, and that's what we used for this, and I had a blast with it. My dad always used to read it to me when I was a kid, but this time I've been reading it because I enjoy reading out loud when I can. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that one. Getting into the books that I read in November, the first book that I read was Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie, which I surprisingly loved. I tend to struggle with sci-fi. For whatever reason, the written form version of sci-fi just tends not to be my thing. I will watch all the TV shows and movies that are sci-fi that you can shove in front of my face, but for some reason when it comes to reading it, I have a bit of a harder time. Don't know what it is, still working on it, but I loved Ancillary Justice a lot more than I was expecting to. This is my friend's pick book for November, and it was just so compelling, so gripping, so interesting, and I just kept wanting to read it. And it's a very interesting exploration of a book. And I don't even know if I can properly explain it, but it takes place in a kind of expanded world where these kind of AI-like people rule this ice planet. And a person who was from like 1,000 years ago or something woke up and is now in the present day and is just kind of trying to figure it out. And she was like from this other ship and stuff. I don't know, it was really interesting. I also really loved the exploration of gender and sexuality in it. It was just really, really well done, very unusual, just across the board. I had a blast reading this book, and I can't wait to pick up the second one. Weird for me to say about a sci-fi, but true. Then I also finished Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson in November, which I loved. It's probably my favorite Sanderson book to date, which is a drastic contrast from my feelings on Way of Kings. I loved Words of Radiance a lot. It almost felt like it was written by a different author. The characters were so well done, so fleshed out. I loved their storyline. The plot had really good pacing and was really interesting and kept me wanting to know what was going to happen. The writing was spectacular. I loved the writing, and the world, just what we learned about and what we got to know was just so interesting. So I loved Words of Radiance, and I want more of that, please. So I'm very interested to pick up Oathbringer. And then the next book that I read was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And if you've been hiding under a rock for the last, I don't know, however many months, because this is like one of the most popular books out there right now, I feel. This is kind of what it says. It's a modern take on a Gothic romance, Gothic horror novel. And it was so well done. Like, I am a huge lover of Gothic books. Like, I've read the majority of them. I think there are only like maybe one or two I haven't gotten to yet, but I love Gothic novels. So this one was just a delight for me to read. I had so much fun with it, and I can't recommend it enough. Like, seriously, it is very good, very well done, very creepy and eerie, perfect. Like, if you guys can read creepy novels at night, I would highly recommend doing that with this, because it just adds an extra layer to it. So yeah, that's what I did. There were times where I was like, oh, I have a bit of free time, let's read this during the day. And I was like, no, I don't want to read this during the day. I want to wait till nighttime, because I just need that extra creepy factor. And it was just fantastic. I loved it so much. Would recommend 100%. Basically what it is about, because I haven't told you at this point, is it follows our main character. What is her name? I don't even remember her name. It follows our main protagonist as she goes to visit her cousin, who wrote a really kind of disturbing letter about her husband trying to kill her. She's recently married, and so her father sends her to go to this manor, and when she gets there, all kinds of creepy and eerie things start happening, and there's just something about the family and the house that's just not quite right. And I don't know, it's just so good. I had a really great time with it, and it explores some really, really deep topics and whatnot. And I'm going to link my review down below, like I do for all of the books that I've read. Take a look at the content / trigger warnings for this one, because there are kind of a lot of them. And if you want to know more about them, feel free to like DM me or message me or something, or leave a comment down below, and I'll try to ease your fears a bit. But if you can get by the triggers, I would highly recommend picking this one up. And then the next book that I finished was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. For those of you who don't know, this is a reread for me. I love Robin Hobb. Her Realm of the Elderling series is one of my all-time favorite things in the whole world. If you're new here, I talk about this series a lot. I have a whole video series about these books and everything, which I'd highly recommend going to watch if you haven't yet. But this is the second installment in the books. It's split into multiple trilogies and whatnot. This is the second book in the overall series and the second book in the Farseer trilogy. And I was buddy reading this with my friend Vendi. We're planning on doing all of the books at some point. And how do I even talk about this book? Basically, this book picks up right where the first one left off, or a few months after the first one left off, and our main protagonist, Fitz, is recovering in the mountains from the events at the end of the first book, which is Assassin's Apprentice. And when he goes back to Buckkeep, he's enmeshed once again in all kinds of political intrigue and turmoil and danger. And a lot happens in the process. And it is heartbreaking and beautiful all at the same time. And I'm going to stop talking about it now, otherwise we'll be here for an hour and no one wants that. But these books come with a slew of trigger warnings. I will leave my review down below. As always, once again, look at them carefully before deciding to jump in. It's a very, very heavy series. And I don't say that lightly. Seriously, please, please heed my warnings. And if you can, read it with a buddy or talk to someone who has read these books while you're reading, because just don't go it alone. Like, please, trust me, don't read this series alone. It's very heavy, it's very emotional, and I'm glad that I had a buddy both times, because yeah, it's just a lot. And all the characters are just everything. I love all of them. All of them. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about this now. Goodbye. The next book I read was a novella called Edge Dancer, which is also by Brandon Sanderson. And this is a book that you read, or a novella that you read right after Words of Radiance, but before you read Oathbringer. So it follows one of the minor characters that we met in Words of Radiance and expands on their character and a different aspect of the world, which I really liked. It was really interesting. I wasn't so sure. I was like a huge fan of it at first, but then by the end I was sold. And I'll be really interested to see how her character develops as the series goes on. And then I ended up finishing the Arcanum Unbounded, because that was part of the last part of that collection that I needed to finish that book out. So those are all of the books that I read. Now on to the samples that I've read over the last couple of months. I only did two genres. I did one in September and one in October. I originally had plans to do another one in November, but it just didn't work out, and that's okay. And I was always going to take December off. I'm still taking December off, so we'll pick up my sample journey in January. The samples that I read over the last couple of months were my sci-fi samples and my mystery samples. And first I read my sci-fi samples, and I read those back in September. And out of the 11 that I read, I removed 3 from my TBR, kept 6, and had 2 in that kind of like limbo spot. So as I said, I read 11. And of those 11, the 2 that are on limbo, I figured I'd start with those, are Leviathan Wakes and Atlas Shrugged. I read Leviathan Wakes, I don't know, early this year, I think it was. And it was interesting, but I was also on the fence about whether I wanted to continue or not. So I was really struggling with my feelings for it, and so I decided to sit with it, and I'm still unsure. So I'm going to revisit it again at some point in the future to reevaluate whether I want to continue or not. And the same thing with Atlas Shrugged. I read the first chapter. It's a very dense book, but it's really interesting and still really relevant, and I do ultimately think I want to try and get to it. I just don't know when or if that will happen. So I'll be very interested to see if I ultimately end up picking that one up again. And then the books that I removed from my TBR, as I said, there are 3 of them. The first one was A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. That one, it just wasn't gripping me. It wasn't holding my interest. It was just kind of strange, and it just, because I wasn't feeling it, I was kind of just skimming it to get through it. It's just not one that I really want to continue. And then the second one is The City and the City, and I had a weird experience with this one. It's, a lot of people I know classify it as sci-fi, but it felt more crime noir to me, which is not a genre I've ever really thought of reading before. And I generally like movies and TV shows of that genre, but like books I've never really thought about. And it was interesting, and I thought about continuing it, but then I realized like I never thought about it after I walked away from it. So I was like, do I really want to read this? I don't know, probably not. So I decided to remove it, but who knows? That one's kind of like a soft remove, I guess. And then the third one I removed is This Is How You Lose the Time War. I had a really complicated relationship with this book. or this novella, I should say. I tend not to like novellas. They are just not something I gravitate towards. I read a couple this year, and some I've been okay with, some I've been not okay with, some I've been kind of meh about. Most of them I've been meh about, let's be completely honest. And This Is How You Lose the Time War just really wasn't gripping me. It was very fast paced, but it felt rushed. And I wasn't connecting to anything in the world, so I was just like, you know what? I don't think this is for me. Let's move on. And then the 6 that I'm keeping are Unearthed, Mirage, Invictus, A Memory Called Empire, The Ghost from the Grand Banks, and The Abyss Surrounds Us. So Unearthed is kind of like Indiana Jones in space. That's the best explanation I've got for you. And it is really fun so far. I'm really enjoying my time, or I really enjoyed the sample that I read for it. So I definitely want to continue that one. Mirage is kind of like a softer sci-fi, which I kind of like, I feel. Like I don't necessarily know what my niche in sci-fi is yet. So I'm doing a lot of exploration. But I really liked Mirage. It's kind of a, I don't know how to explain it. It's basically, there's like royalty, and a royalty wants a decoy for like the princess or whatever. So they find this commoner who looks just like her, and they like switch places kind of thing. It's kind of interesting. I'll be really interested to see how that world continues to develop as time goes on. Invictus I also really liked. It's a time travel historical sci-fi, which I am digging so far. It starts in what I'm going to call like Roman time period, and then we come back to, like, we fast forward to the future where this boy is part of this military camp. He gets kicked out, which is like a huge deal, especially because he's the son of this really prominent time traveler person. And then he ultimately gets like a second chance kind of a thing, and I guess things kind of go from there. I'm really interested in how this world will expand because I just loved what I read so far. And A Memory Called Empire is very politically intriguing, which I love. So I'm really interested to continue with that one. It's hard for me to explain it, but I've really liked what I've read so far. And then The Ghost from the Grand Banks, I also really loved. It's kind of a like historical nonfiction / sci-fi about more of it's dealing with the Titanic. It says that in the title, but like you don't know that at the very start of the book until kind of where I stopped. But basically there's like this big discovery, and they find the Titanic, and I think it has something to do with like ghosts or something. I don't know because I didn't get very far, but I really liked the style of writing, and I really liked where the story was going. It's very fast moving, it's very intriguing, so I definitely can't wait to continue on with that one. And the last one was The Abyss Surrounds Us, and this one I was waffling back and forth on. I like the author. I've read one other book of hers that recently came out, and I really liked that one. This is one of her earlier works, and I liked it, but I didn't love it, but I'm still intrigued by it, primarily the world and some of the characters. So I'm kind of intrigued to continue for that reason, but we'll see. That one is like a soft keep. It's not quite an on the fence. It's like, I do want to continue this, but it's like not a priority kind of a thing. So I don't know. That one's in a weird category once again. But yeah, those are all my sci-fis. I'm surprised I kept as many as I did, but I did. And I'll be very interested to continue on with them. And now on to my mystery samples. And these I was a little bit pickier with. I removed 2 from my TBR. I kept 3, and I had 2 in limbo. So in total, I had 7 books. 2 that are in limbo are 9 Coaches Waiting, and One Woman's War. So, Nine Coaches Waiting is really interesting. It's kind of got a Gothic-y feel, like a Rebecca-ish feel almost. And I wasn't a huge fan of Rebecca, but the way that this story is going so far is intriguing. But there are parts of it that I'm just like, I'm not sure if I'm digging this. So I'm going to revisit it at a later time because it just wasn't quite gripping me in the way that I wanted it to, but I'm still potentially intrigued by it. And One Woman's War, I liked everything about it except for the writing. It's really interesting, but the writing is just not great. So I actually, we have a weird connection to the author. Like, my dad has a weird connection to the author, so we got the book for free. And the summary sounded interesting, but I wanted to sample it first, and I'm glad I did, because there were just some things about the writing that just really wasn't jiving with me. But I do think I want to try it again at another time, but I'm not quite sure, because I said the plot and the setting and the themes that are explored in the book are all things that I am particularly interested in checking out, but I need to get past the writing block first in order to do that. So we'll see what I ultimately end up deciding. Then the two books that I removed from my TBR are The Glass Hotel and The Cater Street Hangman. So The Glass Hotel was very odd. I just wasn't liking it. I found myself skimming it to get through it faster, and I couldn't tell you what it was about. Just that I didn't like it, and I just not into continuing it. And then The Cater Street Hangman was trying to be like Sherlock Holmes, but with misogyny, because it was a female protagonist, and I just didn't like the way that it was being written. It was just not jiving with me. I didn't like the characters. I just didn't like anything about it. So I'm just not into continuing with that one either. Three that I'm keeping The Secret History, The Ghosts in the Third Row, and Truly Devious. So if there's one thing that I kind of learned from those three books that I picked alone, I like setting-based mysteries. Like, okay, my queen of mysteries will always be Agatha Christie. I love her work a lot. She's the only mystery author that can still surprise me or attempt to surprise me. And I've been looking for a good mystery for a while, and I for some reason, just the boarding school thing is appealing to me. Who knew? But the first one I'll talk about is The Ghost in the Third Row. This is a middle grade. It's really fast reading. It's really quick. And it's like got Phantom of the Opera vibes, but for middle grade. And I just really liked it, the little that I read of it so far. And I definitely want to continue on because it's very fast moving. It's very interesting. It was very fun. And I don't know, I just liked everything about it. And then Truly Devious is a fairly popular mystery novel out there. It's a YA mystery novel that takes place at a boarding school, and it's got dual timelines. So one takes place in 1930, and then one takes place in I think it's like the early 2000s or something. And I really like it a lot. It's kind of seems to be like there was a murder that happened in 1930, and it was kind of a cold case, and now something in the present day is happening similar, and our main protagonist in current day is trying to solve it, kind of a thing. And I just am really into the atmosphere and the characters, just everything about it. I'm really liking it a lot so far, and I'm very, very interested to continue on. And then The Secret History. So I loved what I read of The Secret History so far. And I know that that book is very polarizing just across the board. People seem to either love it or hate it. And I'm falling in the category of loving it. Like it's my jam. So it it deals with classicists that commit a murder and kind of everything that I guess leads up to that and happens afterwards. But the setup and our main character who's telling the story is very interesting. And just the fact that it's classicists and that they're kind of like shown as a cult almost is just really funny to me. I was a classicist in high school and in college, and I can tell you, like, we tend to be very cliquey, but most departments are. I feel like you connect with people who have similar interests to you. Like, that's just how it works. But just a lot of the things that were being portrayed in this book are something that, like, things that I can kind of relate to. Like, it's kind of fun because classicists, with learning classical languages like Latin and Greek, it's different than learning conversational languages, because like on your first day you learn, or like within your first year you learn like 20 different words for death and kill, whereas in normal conversational languages you learn like how to say hello and greet people and ask how they're doing and whatever. So I mean, just the topics that classicists discuss and everything, and just the pretentiousness of the students, is in a weird way eerily relatable to me. Not necessarily the pretentiousness, but just the discussions that they have and the events of the book. It's just, I don't know. I really connected to it. I was sucked in immediately. I had a lot of fun with it. And I definitely want to continue it. Like, don't at me. I am having a blast reading that book. And I definitely can't wait to continue. But I'd be curious if any of you out there have also read it and really enjoyed it. Because I'm definitely going to want to talk to people about this after. So those are all of the samples that I've read in the last couple of months. And now on to the books that I am currently reading or planning on picking up in December. So in December, I'm reading or finishing up 5 things. I need to finish The Return of the King. All of my other buddies that I was reading it with, Vandy, Kara, and Kelsey, have all finished it. I have not yet. I was waiting for them, and then they all finished it, and then I got distracted, and it just didn't work out the way I was planning to. But I've read it before, so as long as I finish it before the end of the year, I'm golden. And then I am also reading Inda by Sherwood Smith. That's my last Friends Pick book of all of them, and so far what I've read is really interesting. I really like the world, and just the dynamics between the characters is really interesting. But other than that, I'm not quite, I don't quite have an opinion yet, because I'm still fairly early in the book. But so far what I've read has been interesting, and I'm looking forward to continuing on. And then I'm also rereading Assassin's Quest, and I'm continuing my buddy read with Fendi. And then I also have 2 Christmassy books that I want to pick up. The first being An Irish Country Christmas by Patrick Taylor. If you guys don't remember, the last couple of years I've been reading the Irish Country series. I read the first 2 books, An Irish Country Doctor and An Irish Country Village, I think is what it's called. I really like the Irish Country Doctor. It's hilarious, it's delightful, would recommend. Irish Country Village liked significantly less, but that was a personal thing because of certain ways that they portrayed lawyers, and I'm just so annoyed with that in books and media as a whole. So I liked it less. Like, it was still enjoyable, but it wasn't like my new favorite thing ever. So I'll be very interested to see what I think of An Irish Country Christmas. I know my grandma read it and she really liked it, so I'll be interested to see where I fall. And then I'm also planning on rereading The Enchanted Sonata. I read it for the first time last year and absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to reread it this year. And honestly, every one of you should read it. It is one of the most underrated books that I think I know of. I only know one, maybe two other people that have read it. It's a Nutcracker retelling, and it's so good, and you all should read it. Well, I should say Nutcracker and Pied Piper combo retelling, but like heavily focused more on the Nutcracker aspect, and it's so good. Like, it's so good. You should all read it, please, and then come scream at me and Kara about it, because we both love it so much and want all of you to read it with us. But yeah, so those are all of my plans for the rest of the year. Fingers crossed that I can accomplish everything I want to accomplish. And yeah, that's pretty much it for now. So let me know down below in the comments if you've read any or are planning on reading any of the books or samples that I talked about. I'd love to talk to you about them all, but other than that, you all know the drill. I have all of my social media links down below in the description, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy and just generally okay during this chaotic and crazy year, and I hope you are all doing well. And I'll catch you later in another video for you again soon. Bye!